And when I gave my first talk, believe it or not, I was only 4 years as a monk, just basic training. And this is what my teacher Ajahn Chah would do. It was a big occasion, and this particular time it was Magha Puja, the full moon day in February. And so he would, all the monks were there, maybe about 100 or 200 monks, and about a few thousand lay people. And he would normally give the talk on such big occasions. And he looked down the line of monks. Sometimes I saw him do this before, and he got one of the other senior monks to give the talk. But this time, Ajahn Chah's eyes went from the very top monks all the way down. He came to me, and his eyes went past. Because if he stopped at my eyes, I would have to give the talk in either Thai or Isan language, the northeast dialect. And he went right past me. That was a big relief. And then his eyes started coming back up the line again and stopped at me. Brahma Wangso, give the talk. I was only 4 years as a monk, and I had to give 1 hour talk, and that was in the Isan language. Got no choice, you had to do it. So that was actually how I was trained. Always managed to give a talk, no matter what, no matter where. And sometimes the talks are good, sometimes they're bad, but at least if I ever go to Indonesia, because I can say a few words of Indonesian and Bahasa, but not many, and because of that there's always a translator. And so sometimes when there's a translator, it always gives me an opportunity that if I make a mistake, I make a mistake in English, he can always correct it in Bahasa before I get into trouble. So it's lovely when you have people translating for you. But sometimes also when there is translations, no, it's okay, it's only a kid. Sometimes when there's translations, sometimes you lose the flow of a talk. It's much more preferable to say it in one language. And in those days, of course, I was fluent in Thai and Laotian, could translate for Ajahn Chah. He often asked me to. But these days, because I haven't used it for such a long time, sometimes that fluency in Thai has kind of disappeared over the years. I still understand exactly what's being said, but nevertheless, it's been a great privilege over all these years to be able to not just to go to places like Thailand to give talks, but also, again, to Indonesia, to many places in Indonesia. I'm saying that because there's many Indonesians here. I have some lovely experiences in Indonesia, especially when you go on the aircraft in Indonesia. There's 2 times which I remember from Indonesia is going on, on Garuda Airlines. And the first times was when I got to the airport and I saw that the flight had been not delayed, but cancelled. So you get to the airport and people are waiting for you at the other end, and you're supposed to be giving a talk as soon as you land there, and the flight has been cancelled. And I saw many people, mostly well-dressed businessmen, going to the counter and banging on the desk. You can't do this to me, I've got an important business meeting. You know what happened? There's a lot of banging on the desk. They got a sore hand. So please never bang on desks, it never works. But then I did manage to ask someone to borrow a phone so I could ring up the people at the other end and say I couldn't go, I couldn't arrive, the flight has been cancelled. And then I explained why it had been cancelled. It was obvious why the flight from Perth to Bali on Garuda Airlines, why it had been cancelled. It was right in the middle of the bird flu crisis. And I explained that Garuda's a bird. It must have got the flu. But one of the other times, I think I said this the other day, that was going on the flight there to go to a conference over in Yogyakarta. And as we went on the aircraft, and sitting in the economy class right in the back, it's only a short flight. And so sitting in the back there, as the flight attendants came past, to check that everybody was sitting properly, had the seatbelts fastened. One of the flight attendants stopped, looked at me, and said, "Are you Ajahn Brahm?" I said, "I think so." And then I'm explaining this pretty accurately. I think Burr was there at the time, you can check with her, Burr's son. And then she put her hand on her heart and said, "Oh, I must be one of your best disciples. I've read all your books, I've listened to all your recordings. Oh, it's such a wonderful thing, I'm on your flight." And I didn't mind because I realised I'd get very good service. So they had to serve all the breakfast or whatever it was. Then afterwards, in the middle of the flight, when the breakfast had been served, that's when she came to me as well and said, "Can you come up to the front, please? That's the galley." And so I did what I was told. And then all of the flight crew were there. Everyone. And they said, "What's happening?" I said, "Photo op." So they had to take photos with all of the flight hostesses and the senior, the flight attendant. And you could see in the galley there's all these lights going off. Beep, 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 beep. Because this was a flight from Perth to Bali. And it was mostly filled, not with monks, but with people going on holiday to the beach, going surfing. And they all wanted another glass of beer. And they kept on ringing for the flight attendant, but the flight attendant never came because they were having a photo op with Ajahn Brahm. I kind of enjoyed that. And eventually they finished photographing the photo session, and then when I started walking back first, I see all these Australians, they were looking at me as if there was an open door, they'd have thrown me out of the aircraft. They were not happy with the fact they couldn't drink as much beer as they usually did. But sometimes, it's nice actually having served for such a long time and just getting to know people. And it's the getting to know people which is one of the most wonderful parts of being a monk. Simply because you can see kids come when they're really young and they're so welcome. And also they sometimes grow up with the monks. What that means is later on in their life, when they have any problems or troubles, there's always things which the monks can do which other people can't. And I love this story. This was for the Sri Lankan community. One day one of the Sri Lankan girls, she was at university, and doing her studies, she came up to me and quietly she said, "Can I have a quiet word with you, Ajahn Brahm?" I said, "Why? What's happened?" She said, "I really, really, really need your help." She said that she's in big trouble. I said, "What's the problem? How can I help you?" And she said that found out she was pregnant with her boyfriend. I said, "Have you told your mum and dad yet?" She said, "No, that's what I've come to see you for." If they found out, they'll kill me. That's what she said. Of course, they would never kill their daughter, but nevertheless, she was so embarrassed and didn't know what their reaction would be. So that was my job. I had to call her mum and dad and say, "Look, your daughter's got in a bit of trouble." But I said, "Also, why is it that she's so scared of you? You're the mum and dad. There are times when your kids can get into trouble, and that's the time when they need you more than anything, any time else. So please let your children know, whatever they do in their life, the mum and dad are always there for them." That's what happened to me, that my father took me aside one day. Even though he was very poor, he said, the door of his house will always be open to me, no matter what I ever do. I was his son. She is your daughter. no matter what she gets up to in life. Now you're a mum, and you'd always look after her and care for her. And that kind of made me start to see some of the benefits, of being a long-term monk, so that you can assist people no matter what trouble they get into. There's always things which you know they trust you, and I can sort of kind of calm any of those difficulties. But please, each one of you who have children, please let your kids know, no matter what they get up to, no matter what they do, please let them know that mother and father is there not to scold them, but there to assist and help them. And as long as they tell you the truth of what's going on, then never scold them. Help them instead. So if they do get into trouble, they've got a mother and father who can help them in whatever ways they can. Because that's the other thing. Because I'm a senior Buddhist monk, I've been a monk for 50 years, and I've got a reasonably good reputation, that means that many, many, many people trust me. I love telling that other story of that Sri Lankan woman who was studying at Curtin University, and when she was studying nursing, because she was studying nursing here, it was on her, had to pay for it herself, and her husband was working 2 jobs, and she had a couple of kids as well to look after. It was a very, very, very busy and stressful situation for her, and especially with her husband having 2 jobs. He was coming home from one job early in the morning, and he crashed a car, and he was killed. And imagine that situation. You've got the wife, just at university studying nursing, and no more husband, no more income coming in, and 2 kids to look after. The Sri Lankan community were great. They did a fundraiser for her, but then that was not enough for her to get through the difficulties. But as you know, because I've got myself well known, that I'd been given this medal by John Curtin University, the John Curtin Medal. You think, what do you want a medal for? You're a monk, you don't need any recognition like that. But anyway, I accepted that medal, and when I did, you got to know some of the people who used to look after and run Curtin University, especially the Vice-Chancellor. So as soon as I heard that this trainee nurse, was in, again, big trouble, I could actually just ring up Curtin University and go straight to the Vice-Chancellor's department and get straight through to the Vice-Chancellor. It was Jeanette Hackett at the time. She respected me. I don't know if she was a Buddhist, but certainly she was, halfway there anyway. And so, Ajahn Brahm, how can I help you? He said, well, one of your students has had this tragedy. She's lost her husband, and she's a good student, but she's financially, she's in really good difficulty. Are there any scholarships? And I can vouch for her. And Professor Hackett said, okay, if you vouch for her, that's all I need. And she gave her a scholarship for the rest of her time at Curtin University. She never had to pay a thing. And I was wonderful that was because, you did accept some of these honours which get bestowed on you, but also because you worked hard by going to Curtin University regularly for that little Buddhist community there, even going on the local Curtin radio station and telling a few of my very bad stories. I don't know if you've heard those bad stories. I can see a couple of people starting to nod. So one of the stories is actually in the book. So somebody wrote in here, Ajahn Brahm's worst jokes. And one of those worst jokes was the carrot story. I'm going to see if I can do it this time, because I always mention, every time I tell this carrot story, I usually, before I get to the punchline, I start laughing, because I think it's hilarious. There were 2 carrots walking down St. George's Terrace in town. And there was one person, must have been drinking, I'm not sure why. They lost control of the car, and they went up onto the curb, and they hit one of those carrots. And that carrot was really injured. So they managed to call an ambulance, and an ambulance came from Royal Perth Hospital pretty quickly, They took one look at the injured carrot, put him in the back of the ambulance, and they rushed to a Royal Perth hospital. And when they got there, and the triage nurses took one look at him, and my goodness, he was so badly injured, it was straight into surgery, emergency. And of course his friend, the other carrot, went with him. That's what you do if you're involved in this accident. At least there's somebody there who knows who you are. And he was in the waiting room. And if you've ever been in the waiting room when someone's badly injured, and you're so concerned, are they going to live or are they going to die? And so he was waiting and waiting and waiting, and eventually one of the surgeons came in and said, they recognized him straight away, "Oh, you must be a friend of the injured carrot." I don't know why. And he said, "I've got some good news and bad news." And the good news, and because we, of our skills as surgeons, we caught him very quickly, that he's going to survive. He's going to live. But unfortunately, the bad news is, because of his injuries, he's going to be a vegetable for the rest of his life. It's like a dumb joke. That's why I like it so much. So anyhow, in those 50 years, I think that's the worst one. And one of the other ones I did, is in those 50 years. It's not just here in Perth, you go and teach, but also over in UK. Because I was born in UK, and then I decided to sacrifice when Ajahn Brahm managed to get a beautiful property in Oxford. And that was such a sacrifice for me, because I went to Cambridge. And even when I was in Cambridge, we always said that the other place, the university whose name shall not be mentioned, competition. But anyway, so when I was giving talks over not Oxford, actually it was in London, I was just on the underground. It's important for monks and nuns not just to go everywhere in cars. And people love to take you here or take you there. We'll give you a lift, Ajahn Brahm. It's great to use public transport. Even in Indonesia, I try whenever I can to get Handicap to make sure you go in public transport, not just cars. Because when you do, people get to see you. So in London, I was in one of the underground trains, and I was just minding my own business, and this woman, she stood up and came and sat next to me. And she looked at me and said, "Are you a Buddhist monk?" I said, "Yes." She said, "A real Buddhist monk?" "Yes, a real monk." And then she said, "I always wanted to ask questions about Buddhism, especially about rebirth, reincarnation. Do you guys understand that?" I said, "Yes." So, "Well, give me an example." And I told her the story about this Italian meditator. You know what's coming. The thing is, when they remember these stories, because I've told them many times before, but you have not heard them as much as I've heard them. Every time I say. Anyway, Italian meditator over in Janaka, the opposite side of the road. Is there any Italians here? Few. Anyway, he was an Italian meditator, and as he was meditating, he got this kind of vision about his past life. Was it past life? Shh. He got these visions. And in his first vision, he thought he was a strand of spaghetti. In his second vision, he imagined he was a piece of macaroni. And he said, "What's going on?" He said, "It's obvious. You're remembering your past lives." Ajahn Brahm joke. I'm making it up. It's obvious. But anyway, I said that to this lady in a London Underground train. And if you've ever been in London Underground trains, no one ever looks at you in the eye. They always avoid eye contact. They don't talk to you. It's a really unfriendly place. And they either have an iPhone or was messing around with actually aircon. Stop it. Or they were looking at a newspaper. But they're always listening. That's what I know. That's what I discovered. And so as soon as I said that punchline, he's remembering his past lives. The woman next to me burst out laughing. But everyone else in that crowded underground train, they either looked up from their iPhones and either groaned or they laughed. But he had everybody's attention. And I thought it was a wonderful way of actually spending just a few minutes explaining what Buddhism was, real Buddhism, to people just travelling in the London Underground. They kind of enjoyed it. So I love travelling as best I can, just letting the public see you. Even sometimes, over in Thailand when I was a monk, and they would try and travel in the buses, a lot of times in Thailand they always put the monk up the front of the bus. And one time I was going from Chonburi up into Bangkok, and somebody got the ticket for me already, and as soon as I got on the bus driver smiled. He was so happy. I was the only monk on the bus, and he made sure I sat in the very front seat of the bus. And then I found out why. Because when you're right in the front seat, they think the monk has got such good karma, it prevents the bus crashing into anything. and that bus had a big camera, a TV camera on the front, because he was looking at a movie. And he was looking at the movie. And it was me who was looking at the traffic. I was right at the front. Of course it worked, I survived. So did everyone else on the bus. But that's quite common in Thailand, to put the monk in the front of the bus. So I thought, the first time I travelled on Thai Airways, economy class, that monks have got such good karma, they can protect you from any crashes. So, why don't you put the monk up in the front? They wouldn't upgrade me. It was the last time. So anyway, you have a lot of fun as a monk. And that fun, that joyful aspect of monastic life, again, is a wonderful way. Why have many of you come today, spending an extra, hour here? Why do many of you come to this temple, or go to our temple in town, or go to the nuns' monasteries? Why? Because you find it's a friendly place. It's not just friendly so as you can have a few laughs and jokes, you can tell your friends afterwards. It's friendly and happy, because that's an important part to make sure that when you come here, you look forward to coming to monastery. You feel welcome. It's not, you don't come here because you have to. You come here because you enjoy it. Now life is more difficult enough. When you go to work, those of you who do work, you don't have to. The nice thing about coming here, you always get free food. Not just you. You get food, you just do a little bit of work. You get nice accommodation. And you always sort of, hopefully you always feel welcome. And you felt with that welcome ever since you were very small. When you first came here, how old were you? Year 2. Year 1. Look, this is... So kids actually grow up in this monastery. Oh, you want this thing? Okay, you've got to go. Where was it? She bought this for me to bless for 1 week. It hasn't been here, it's been on my shrine in my hut.
That's okay.
So this is full of power. Oh, you
Yeah. Can't carry home too.
Okay, very good. Okay, so for those who have to go home because they've got other things to do later on, you're going to miss some amazing stories and amazing jokes. Okay. But this is actually how we live. And when we live like this, you find out there's many people who want to become monks and nuns. Many people want to visit and support. Honestly, for those of you who live in Australia, even in Indonesia, how many places do you know with so many monks, so many bhikkhunis, so many people visiting? How many? Basically, this is kind of weird. All the years we've been here, we've had stability, trust, not just for Australians, not just for Thais, not just for Sri Lankans, not just for Indonesians, not just for Japanese, not just for Polish. Dziękuję. Sometimes I've got to be careful because as soon as I say, one language, people think I can, or one word in one language, I think I can speak the whole language. You know that one of those books which I wrote about the opening the door of your heart book, have you read that one? That was the most successful edition of that, was the one which was translated into Deutsch, into German. Is there any German-speaking people here? Oh, there you are, yeah. What was it called? Bhikkhu Anniversary. Yeah. Yes, that was the name. And as soon as it was published, it went really, really well. In the top 10 over in Germany, first of all. And so I got all these emails, because it's translated into Deutsch. All these emails in Deutsch, inviting me to all these talk shows in Germany. And I thought, they don't realise that I'm an Australian. It was translated into Deutsch. I don't know what I was going to say if I went to Deutsche to actually go on the talk shows. But it's kind of inviting anyway. Sometimes that's another thing which I love doing, because you don't want just this Buddhism, and my life as a Buddhist monk, just to stay within the realms of Buddhist temples and go to other Buddhist temples. It's nice to spread it around, because it's very, very useful and very powerful. That's why a lot of times I've gone to amazing conferences, and one of those conferences, they invited me all the way to UK for a human resources conference, a HR conference. And that was over in Docklands. It's really high profile. So I went out there and I did my job and gave a talk. And then when I was just before I was about to go up to give my talk to so many people, that's when the organizer said, "Oh, there's a couple of people outside trying to get in for free. They say they know you." And so I went to check them out. Did I know them? It was my brother. Cheapskate. It was my brother and my niece, his daughter. I said, why don't you pay the fare? And just, it's a ticket, he's a banker, he could afford it. And he said, "Yeah, I know, but..." So I talked sweetly to the organiser, and so they allowed him in. And that's when he told me how much it was costing. I think it was something ridiculous, like £15 a person or something. And that was just, just two people. It was only like an hour presentation. This is about an hour's presentation. So now I know my market rate. But it was wonderful to be able to spread all these teachings as far and wide as you possibly can. Take care. Now these two have been coming ever since we started this place. So it's really nice to see you keep coming on here, and thank you again for coming on this occasion. And because of that that as soon as I returned to Perth, I got another email from the National Health Society. They'd been to my talk at that conference. They said it was really good. Can you come and give a talk at our conference? They were going to hold it in the town of Birmingham in UK. And straight away I said, look, I've just returned to Perth. That's a long flight. And you call yourself the British National Health Corporation or National Health Service? That'll be bad for my health if I get on another plane tomorrow and just fly all the way over to UK a second time. So I said no, and they said afterwards, thank you for that email. We've printed it out and it's on the secretary's walls in the offices there. Just a nice, interesting reply, how to say no. The National Health Service should be careful of making sure all the people who come to your conferences have good health instead of ruining their health by asking them to do too much. I wanted to get a copy of that for the BSWA. Where's any members? Where are you gone? Yeah, where's our secretary? There. So you've got to look after Ajahn Brahm. Is that a good idea? Yeah. So please don't organise too many things for me. This is my 50th anniversary as a monk. I don't mind 50th. But when I get to 60th, I'll be even more old and more ancient, more antique. And you have to look after antiques. Hi! And you'll be, in 10 years' time, you'll be a young teenager. Anyhow, so, how's the time going? Use that way. It's still not done, 15 minutes. Or 15 minutes to go. Okay. But anyhow, it's been a wonderful journey as a monk all these years. And of course, sometimes you look, at what you've done in all these years. It's not just even, Bhikkhunis, but I was also looking where I am now. This hall here. Who built this hall? Who's the builder on the building license? Whose name? Yeah, me. It's not supposed to be. It's actually illegal this is a public building, and you're supposed to get building contractors. You know, you can't do it like what's it called, owner builder, yeah. I wasn't the owner anyway, BSWA owns it. But anyway, and a few days ago someone still had some old photographs of how this building was constructed. One of them was when we just had the floor over here. You know, one of the people who helped build the floor to help wheelbarrow the sand and just to shovel it out of the wheelbarrows and smooth it out. Just so happened Ajahn Brahm was staying with us. So he came and gave a hand. So even Ajahn Brahm, many of you know him. Is he a good monk? Yeah, so he helped do this floor. And the Buddha statue, how do we get the Buddha statue in? It wouldn't fit through the door, so it actually came through the roof. You levitate, yes, done. That was before the tiles were put on. So it came right with a crane through the roof, and then we moved it onto the shrine afterwards. And what else about this building? Oh yeah, lots of powerful relics. You know the relics in the back, where they came from? We've got some of those relics down in the, next to where I sit, in the Dharmasala, that's the eating hall. If anybody wonders, wonder what are these relics? These relics here, some of them here, and some of them down in the hall, the story was that there was a Burmese monk, and I met him, I think, over in Malaysia, and what he was doing was going to some of the more remote parts of Myanmar, Burma, and there was many old stupas, these old chaitiyas, the areas had been taken over by the jungle, and many of them were falling into disrepair. And so he was trying to collect any of the relics of the Buddha and other famous monks, and actually to keep them and save them. And that's what he'd done. He found one village in the north of Burma, in the forest part of Burma, the jungles. And there was one villager, this village, a remote village, had suddenly become very wealthy. And so he asked the villager, how come? The villager never wanted to say, but because this was a Burmese monk, the villager has so much confidence and faith in the monk. He said, well, I was in the jungle, searching for, for some mushrooms or something, some herbs, and I saw this old ruined chaitya. When I was fossicking around, searching around in the ruins, I found out there was this little golden casket, and it's priceless gold and some jewels, and there was some bones and stuff inside the casket, and he threw those bones out because you can't sell bones. And he took the gold and he sold that, and that's where he made a lot of money. And the monk said, look, I'm not going to tell any police or anybody. What I would like to ask you is, can you please take me to where you threw out those bones? And of course the man said, no problem. They trekked through the jungle, and then they found this old stupa, and he showed where they'd thrown out the bones, and they could find quite a few of them. And he said to me, when I saw him, he said, here are some of those bones. He heard that I was doing a good job here in Australia, and he wanted to give me some of those relics. And that's actually how he said he found them, real Buddha relics, ancient ones in a stupa, which had fallen into disrepair in the north of Burma. So of course I accepted them with a lot of gratitude. But the problem next was, how do you get them into Australia? These were Buddha relics. And a monk has to be honest. I cannot smuggle anything. So when I landed in Perth, they had these forms you have to sign about where have you been, how long for, and what are you bringing into the country. And at that time, one of the items was human remains. So that's what I ticked. Grateful to declare, yes, human remains. And I was really disappointed. Apparently nowadays they have these cameras and they record things which they show on the TV. What's the
Border security.
Border security, yeah. I wish I'd have had that, because this would have really been funny. So the ordinary guy said, you got human remains? So let's see them. So they're all in nice little reliquaries, like what we have here. They're all human remains. What remains are they? They're remains of the Lord Buddha. And he looked at me and he said, I've got to call the boss. So he called the head of the customs service who was on duty that day over in Perth Airport. And he looked at me and said, what are these? And I said, look, these are relics of the Lord Buddha, 2,500 years ago. And he looked at me. One of the most difficult questions he'd ever had to answer, what to do with them. He said, that's where the human remains, they're bones. But then he looked at me and said, I'll get out of here. It's too difficult for him. It's one of those times when honesty is always the best policy. You're so honest, they don't know what to do, so you get out. And that's how they came here. And I remember on the way I did visit Singapore, and in Singapore, I said, I'll be back there. It's also up in the main Dharmasala dining room. And in Singapore, we have our group there, the Singapore Buddhist Fellowship. Any of you from Singapore? Yeah. You know the Singapore Buddhist Fellowship? Are you members? You are. Excellent. If ever you go to Singapore Buddhist Fellowship, they're going to move soon from the Yeo's building up into Lavender Road. But anyway, still they've got all the stuff there in Yeo's building, and you might see there some relics, the relic caskets, and they came from me. I brought them over, from this monk over in Burma. And when I first came there and said these are relics of the Buddha, they said, oh yeah. Because many of the people in the Buddhist Fellowship at the time, they were all university graduates, business people, and they just said, oh yeah. But then, I still remember after 2 or 3 days, they sent an email to me, Ajahn Brahm, Ajahn Brahm, Ajahn Brahm. You never believe this. Some of those relics were attributed to Mahamoggallana, and he said, you gave us two little fragments of bone. There's now 3. I haven't got a clue where they came from. It was all sealed up, closed, locked. They'd increased. Yes, that's quite common. And they're doing that, that's why I left them for you. So they'll give you some ideas of confidence and faith. There's other things in this world which, even science. I was a theoretical physicist at Cambridge, which even science can't really understand. But you see it with your own eyes. So they're still there. So if ever you go back there, can manage to go into the main room there, have a look. You can see some of the relics there. So anyway, that's the relic stories. And sometimes that's one of the reasons why, I shouldn't really say this, but this front of this hall here has a huge amount of power to it. Many people come and meditate here. You have the best meditation you've ever had. Is that true, me?
In Bodhinyana, yes.
Right now?
In Bodhinyana, I feel like in my room also. I love the room.
Okay, love the room there. But anyway, it has some extra special power to it. So that's one of the reasons we have these things here. And that's one of the reasons why, if you do get a good reputation, you can help so many things. There's one thing which I have tried to help, is unfinished business at the moment. That's why one of those things which stopped me from passing away. You can't pass away when you've got unfinished business, is that the case? You know what unfinished business is? A nice Bhikkhu Monastery over in UK. And the reason why that happened was because after we did the ordination of bhikkhunis, this was giving equity, for half the population of the world, for women. What's wrong? It's not wrong to have female monastics. So we did the first bhikkhuni ordination in our tradition right here. How many years ago was that? 15 years? 15 years ago, yeah. It did create a bit of a problem. And one of those problems was, when I went to UK, people in UK said, oh, things are very dark for women now in UK, because women were supported over here in Perth and in Australia, especially because of Perth, but certainly not in my home country. So we decided, whenever there's any difficulty or problem like that, I don't just sit on my backside and just talk about it. You make it happen. So, Ayachanda, very good bhikkhuni. Where were you born? England. Okay. But she was already sort of a monastic woman, a nun, in the Burmese tradition, starting out with. But then she too realized, well, why can't she become a bhikkhuni? So that's why she eventually came here. When I found out she was English born, then try and make sure we can get a place for bhikkhunis in UK, which we have. How many of you have been there to Anakamba? No? Okay.
I met when the seminar day.
Ah, yeah.
4 years ago. When I was in Africa, I traveled to London.
I travelled to London, seminar there.
But before the monastery.
Oh, okay.
I only got the monastery in March this
Yeah.
year. This year.
Beautiful monastery, even though it is just overlooking Oxford. You can't have everything right. But it's a place where women can feel totally respected. You think women should be respected?
Yes.
Are you going to be in Noramara on the weekend? Who's giving the Friday night talk? So if you can go, please go, give us support. Are you nervous? No, I'm not. But it's great to, it takes a while to establish that equity, that you support someone not because they're male or they're of this clan or of this lineage. If they're a good monk or a good nun, then they get supported. I know someone else has managed to talk their children into giving the houses they were going to inherit to start a nuns' monastery over in Sri Lanka. Who's that? Over there, yeah. You too. It's beautiful to do that. It gives them a chance to get started over there. And so this is actually one of the things you started, but I haven't really completed that yet. So please go and listen to the talk on a Friday night over in Noramara by Ajahn. And then afterwards, if ever you are visiting sort of UK, and if ever you have the misfortune to have to go to Oxford, please go and visit. It's a beautiful monastery. Unlike this place, you can actually walk all the way from the monastery into the centre of Oxford. It's about an hour and a half, 2 hours.
An hour and a half?
Hour and a half. When you're right in there, you're in this beautiful seclusion, lovely wooded area. And so it's an absolutely brilliant location. How did it happen? Come on. How did it happen? Okay. So, that's how it happened. We were coming back from Liverpool.
On the train?
On the train. I went to Liverpool because I found out there was one of my relations. I hadn't seen her for about 60 years when she actually got married. It was one of my father's niece. And so I hadn't seen each other for a long time. But even one of the relations had married a Thai lady as well. So they knew exactly how to look after me. And so on the way back from the train, getting bored, let's have a look, see if there's anything on sale. And so this beautiful property, which was way outside our price range. But that never stopped me before. And so I saw this piece of land over just outside of Oxford, in a place called Boars Hill. And it looked like some sort of mansion for some billionaire, or millionaire anyway. It looked pretty swish. But then the location was absolutely brilliant. So we found out roughly how much they would sell it for. And that's of course when, okay, how can we help with interest-free loans and stuff? And that's why even at our last committee meeting, as you may remember, he's our secretary, and so we approved to actually extend the loan a little bit longer, so that until actually next August, next year, so that make sure they've got a house. They had an old house, but that hasn't been sold yet. Does anyone want a nice house in Oxford? Going cheap? It's not going cheap. But anyhow, that is happening. But then eventually we have a nice monastery in the UK for women as well. How many Bhikkhuni monasteries have you got over in Indonesia? Where's that?
Santina.
Santina, yeah, good. Yeah. So we have got some, but a place in UK as well. That's kind of, because that's where I was born, I feel a responsibility there. That's where I've met my first Buddhists. You know who the first Buddhist I ever met was? Well, I became a Buddhist when I was 16, but I never knew what to do next. I should have been smart and just looked in the yellow pages under B for Buddhist, but I never thought of that. Instead, when I went to university, the first day I was at Cambridge, first day I was there, they had this society's fair. This was the big, I think the Guildhall, was the Guildhall or the Corn Exchange, I forget which, but in this old building they had all the different societies and fairs you could go and join for your social life while you were at university. One of the first societies I saw which I would never join was the Hare and Hounds Society. That was to go fox hunting. I thought, no, that's not for me. But I saw the Astronomical Society, I joined that. And I saw the Buddhist Society. There was actually a Buddhist society, a club in Cambridge. And honestly, I remember I was really excited. So I went up to the counter and I said, I want to join. And the guy who was manning the counter said, you don't have to join. You know what Buddhism is like. Just come and see. You go for a few talks, and if you like it, then maybe later on you can join. I said, look, I want to join. I was already keeping the 5 precepts. And he said, no, just come and see first of all. I got angry. I got out my wallet, I was a layperson, and put £1 on the table. Join me up. So he had to. And he became like a lifelong friend. That was Bernard Carr, who's now Emeritus Professor of Theoretical Physics at Queen Mary College, I think, in London. A close friend, he used to be a friend, and disciple of Stephen Hawkins. He was in that circle. So he became a life, but also he was the president of the Psychic Research Society in London. When we were students, we'd go ghost hunting together. We weren't running away from ghosts, we were trying to find them. It's obvious, I mean, these ghosts, they're part of nature. We want to find out, are they real? Do they exist? If so, what do they do? I mean, like ghosts, if they're ghosts for a long time, like, do they get lonely? Do they get married? Do the male ghosts look for nice female ghosts and maybe fall in love and just live together and have little baby ghosts? But that's kind of being funny. But exactly, how do they work? And I know one thing which we found out, which I thought was really interesting. I always like sharing this with people. This is in UK. And all those years they've been investigating ghosts. Never once has a ghost physically hurt a human being. Never once. So sometimes things go flying through the air, but they always miss you. They never hit you. It's kind of weird. There's so much evidence for that. And that means you don't need to feel afraid ever of ghosts. They always miss. All they can ever do is to scare. Nothing more than that. And that is a research done by emeritus professors of theoretical physics. In other words, these are not just people who just make up evidence and make sure that what they know is well corroborated. So anyway, things like that, he became a really good friend. And that's one of the reasons why it's nice to make sure that people know how far this Buddhism can go to help and serve people in this world. Over here, I must say, as well as making sure that there's many bhikkhunis in this world, and it's not just there are bhikkhunis, they've got a place where they're respected and supported. Over here in Perth, you are supported. But in places like the UK, you ask the weirdos. Who are you? What are you doing? But we managed to go past that over in Australia, which is a beautiful thing. You can actually say that I was part of making sure it happened. And making sure that also some other things which I see, you know, I'm getting old now, many of you are getting old. It's okay. Kids love being pulled like that. One of the other things is like people get sick. I've seen so many people doing chanting so often for people who have things like cancers. And I have, you know, that's one of the things we also have been doing for such a long time, over 40 years now. First time just invited for the Cancer Support Association, it was called, over here in Perth. You know, for people who have cancer, or their friends have got cancer, their loved ones got cancer, and to be able to be of support for them. Don't care if they're Buddhist or whatever they are. And because of that, you have some amazing results. And because of those amazing results, I've been going to this place over in Cottesloe, Railway Parade in Cottesloe, not the nice part of Cottesloe next to the beach, but you know, just this building about a couple of kilometres away from the beach. I've been going there for 36 years now. I go there once a year and they come here once a year. And I never realised how much you helped those people with cancer until the government at the time, their local MP was also the state premier, Colin Barnett. And because he was the premier, he used his position to make sure that their premises got really upgraded, a multi-million-dollar development. And because of that, when they had the grand opening of this development, they had 2 VIPs there. One was the premier, who just lived around the corner, and the other VIP for the opening was me. I said, why? You know, there's many other more senior Christians in the area, or, you know, or other big donors. Why do you invite me? I haven't given a penny to this society. He said, no, but you've given so much of your time. And they really respected what I had done there, teaching meditation, give them good attitudes of life, what to do when people get cancer and how to deal with it. And it was so well respected, that's why they asked me to also be the second VIP at the opening. And I will always remember that because, as you know, I didn't bring it down here now, but you know, up in the dining hall, I have the little bowl of holy water. So I took the opportunity, I couldn't resist it, to give a nice big blessing for the Premier of Western Australia at the time, Colin Barnett. Give him a soaking. Was that good? Well, I enjoyed it. I did actually ask, I had 2 security men there at the time, but I did ask them, look, this is what I'm going to do, it's only water, okay? Holy water, but yeah, it's okay. So they never arrested me, thank goodness. So anyway, that's the sort of things which I've got up to in this last 50 years. Still many more things to do, but that's just one of the reasons why I've enjoyed my life here, and there's many more years to come. Okay. So we should actually just ask if there's any questions, not comments, Eddie, but questions. Who wants to ask a question? Yeah.
Ajahn, you mentioned a lot of blissful time to be a monk for 50 years.
Yeah.
Do you have any not good experience that you can tell us?
Not good experiences. Actually, not really. I made many mistakes in my life. I told many of those mistakes. Like, you know, some of my chanting. That time when there was a wedding and I was tired. So sometimes you get tired, you do so much as you can. And instead of doing the wedding chanting, I did the funeral chants instead. Once you started doing the funeral chants, I never told anybody at the time. And as far as I know, they're still happily married. They haven't died yet. And one of the other times, those are all my chanting jokes. Be very careful that when you invite the monks to do some chanting, please let us know what chanting you want. Because I was busy working over here a few years ago, and I got a telephone call. There was a Chinese Buddhist family in Perth, in Royal Perth. Their patriarch was in the ICU, he was dying. And they needed a monk to come as soon as possible to do some chanting for him. So, why not? So I got one of the Anagarikas to get the car, and we drove him to Royal Perth Hospital, and I went straight to the ICU, and I didn't have much time, because the fellow was really, really, really close to death. So I went straight into the ICU, and I started my chanting and meditation, and the fellow, he was in a coma at the beginning. He came out of coma. He opened his eyes. It worked. And sometimes I thought, wow, it's amazing. Sometimes you're too late, sometimes you get it just right. And this time it was right, and he came out of the coma. And I thought, so sort of amazed and so happy. And then I went into the waiting room where the family was waiting, and told them the good news. But unfortunately they got very angry at me. Because they said many of them had stopped their work in Hong Kong or Taiwan or somewhere. They'd come from so many different countries in this world. And they'd come and they just wanted me to chant so he had a peaceful death. And they told me, and they were serious, they'd already arranged a funeral service. And they said, now we have to cancel all those arrangements, and then we wasted so much time coming to this foreign country with all the hotel bills and all the worry. And we've got to come back again, probably, it was really old, maybe another 6 months or a year, and do it all over again, but next time we're not inviting you. And honestly, usually they give a nice donation to the monastery. And they're all wealthy business people, but they never gave me anything. Just don't come back again. So that's why, if ever you need any chanting, please let me know first. Is it a chant to get better or to die peacefully? Because if it goes wrong, it's not my fault. But those are a few funny things which happen.
Can I say something?
Yeah, go on, Eddie.
This is sharing and asking a question.
Okay.
This is happened to me, maybe about 10 years ago or more, This period I didn't feel well, So I rang up the monastery. I said, can you please, the monks, do a chanting for me? So and then that's the day. The next day at 4 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, I just woke up still, and there was a bliss, here, my body, in my chest down, was very blissful for half an hour. I tell you, 4 o'clock, So then, so when I had the bliss, I didn't move, so half an hour. The next morning, 4 o'clock again, the same thing, the bliss came again. It happened twice, but not the third time again. Yeah. So the second, after that, my just went off.
Yeah.
So it just went off. So the thing is, the question is, there's a power set from the chant and the Brahm. I suppose it will be the chant of 4 o'clock in the morning.
It does have power. And sometimes there's, again, because I was a scientist, a theoretical physicist, you don't believe these things unless you have kind of evidence. So what I used to do, and the retreats which I did for many of you over in Charnagrove or other places, the very last day we did a sharing of actually loving kindness. We did a generation of loving kindness meditation, and part of that I would ask you to think or visualize a good friend of yours who was really sick or really in trouble, either depressed or suicidal or say a cancer, was having a very difficult time to imagine them, and I would lead you into this. Because I was leading you, it's very easy to focus on that person. And then I'd carry on with the loving kindness meditation, but I'd always pause and look at the clock at that time and remember the time which I asked you to do that. And then, at the end of the retreat, I would actually tell you, at this time, maybe 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you were thinking of your best friend, or maybe your mum, or someone who's really sick, and giving them as much loving kindness as you had. Please call them, not tonight, but maybe tomorrow, and just ask them, how are you, everything going okay? And then say, by the way, what were you doing at 3 p.m. yesterday afternoon? And the reason I don't do that anymore was because all these people were ringing me. It worked, Ajahn Brahm, it worked. I rang up my mother and said, oh, I was thinking of you at that time. It was amazing, very clearly. I felt so good. Because everybody else, and then I put the phone down, somebody else rings up, Ajahn Brahm, it worked. So because of that, I just left it alone. It proved to me, anyway, to myself, that it does actually work when you have in the meditation, doing a lot of meditation, you've got a very focused mind, it has a lot of power. And you can feel that. You can test it out, it works. As a little kid, there was this couple over in Hong Kong. They always wanted a kid, but they tried and tried and tried. But it never worked. They were just, she was actually at best, a little bit past the time when she should really have kids. But nevertheless, they kept on trying, and finally she got pregnant. And then they always attributed me to that. But I'm a good mother, not that way, but just because giving them some good energy. But then came the time they sent this email to me that they'd just come back from the doctors, there was no heartbeat of the baby. So it looked like the baby had not managed to survive. So I said, no, don't terminate anything yet. So I did some really heavy chanting. And of course, they sent another email 2 days later. It's a heartbeat. We found a heartbeat. Thank you so much. And so that little kid did really, really well and was born. And later on, because of the troubles in Hong Kong, they moved over to UK, over in Bristol. I saw them about a year or 2 ago. And the kid is called Kalia. And out of gratitude, every time I went over to Hong Kong, they always managed to go and get me an ice cream at the right time. That became almost like a tradition. And also, that this is last year, I never went to UK this time, but they sent a nice email saying she'd just done her 11 plus and got into the very high stream, incredibly intelligent young lady. It's nice to see her growing up, and you keep in contact. It's like, I'm like the God monk, monk father, or whatever else you might call it. But that special person is always going to be there for her. She knew me before she was born. So that's very nice to be able to be of service like that. And I always, whenever she needs any chanting, I always chant like mad for her to make sure she's protected. That's what we do. Yeah.
If you were going to ask for the relics, how would you understand from 2 there became 3, and also the energy of the place? Is it devas that are around?
And this is the other thing in Buddhism, like heavenly beings, devas. Have you ever seen a deva? A heavenly being? Have you ever felt one? Okay. Funny story first. This was when I was in the northeast of Thailand. After 5 years, you're allowed to go wandering. In other words, take all your possessions on your back, go from place to place. And this was the time I was walking through the central part of Thailand, Phupan district. In those days, it was just like wilderness. It was just being developed. And where I went, one day I was just it was so hot, and I hadn't come across any stream or well. My water bottle had just all dried out, and I was dehydrated. And I came to a ridge in the hills. In the bottom of the ridge, bottom of the valley, you saw there was a small town, and they just basically built about 4 or 5 houses. And I always knew that in those small villages there would always be one house which was a general store, selling things like kerosene, cigarettes, rope, kerosene, things like that. But also, I knew they'd always be selling Pepsi Cola. And I always remembered the story of one of the famous monks who was, traveling between Burma and Thailand, and had run out of food. Hadn't seen a person for days, a human being for days. He was getting so weak, he thought he might not survive the journey. He made this resolution: there are heavenly beings in this world. I'm a good monk, and if there are heavenly beings, will they help me, give me some food? And he turned a corner of the path not long later, and he saw this well-dressed man, gentleman, with one of these tiffin cans. Tiffin cans are like 4 or 5 little tin containers. And in those days, that part of Thailand, you won't stop and ask anything. You have to actually wait for the person to invite you. And what they usually say is Nimon Krap, another Thai. And so he saw this well-dressed man, the first person he'd seen for such a long time, wondering what on earth he was doing in the jungle dressed like that, because in jungle people they just wear rags. And he walked past, this monk walked past, and this man said, Nimon Krap. So he stopped, almost shocked, and he opened his bowl, and this man took off the top cover of the tiffin can and put in some hot rice into the monk's bowl, followed by curries and sweets. He couldn't believe in the middle of nowhere, literally nowhere, that someone had hot food, for this monk. Now normally we're not supposed, over here we ask, how are you, where are you from, anything we can do for you. But in Thailand we're never supposed to ask our donors about anything. We're just grateful to receive the food, maybe give a blessing and that's it. But he couldn't help himself. And this was a well-dressed man with hot food. And it was not so jungle food, this was like food to get in Bangkok. Very high quality food. He couldn't help but ask, where are you from? And this gentleman never answered, but just pointed. Yeah, and that's what everybody concluded. So when I was on this ridge, really thirsty, I thought, okay, now I'm a scientist. If there are devas, I'm a good monk, I was a good monk, keeping precepts, I'm not going to ask for anything. If there are heavenly beings, can I please have a Pepsi? It wasn't just for indulgence, honestly. That was what people had. And that's what they would use to give you a boost of energy and just renew all those stuff you needed to survive, especially the water and the sugar, and I don't know what else I had in there. But anyway, he says, there are heavenly beings, can I have a Pepsi? So I walked through the village. As I was walking, I was like walking meditation. Put your gaze a couple of meters in front of you, not to the left, not to the right, keep quiet. And I could see the corner of my eye, the shop. They always had one. And I walked past it, no one stopped me. No one person stopped me. And then I heard someone running behind me. Nimon Krap! The reason why they never stopped me immediately, because they had an open bottle of Pepsi Cola. It takes a while to get the bottle out of the fridge and actually to take off the top and put a straw in. And they presented me with a cool, open bottle of Pepsi Cola. I thought, wow, that was weird. But being a scientist, that could just be coincidence. Then another person ran up. Nimon Krap, the second bottle of Pepsi Cola. Nimon Krap, and then a third. Nimon Krap, oh, Nimon Ka. Ladies came running after me as well. And the fourth bottle of Pepsi Cola. Now in Thailand, what is the lucky number?
Number 9.
Yeah. And then 9 people came up. Not 10, not 8, just 9. With open bottles of Pepsi Cola. There was a bench I could sit down on, and I put them in front of me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, I said, Davis, you win, you've convinced me. And I drank a little bit from each. I could no way to drink 9 bottles of Pepsi Cola. But anyway, the rest of some kids around. I gave the rest of the kids. And I walked on, just realizing there are such things as heavenly beings, and they are there to help you, if you're a good person. So, are there heavenly beings here? If there are relics of the Buddha here, of course there'll be heavenly beings, devas. If you feel the space is powerful, that's why. You may think I'm just too credulous. If you know my past, you know that I was never credulous. It's the only explanation which makes sense. Okay. Okay, last question, yeah.
Can you do an advert for Coca-Cola as well?
That's one of these things. You know, sometimes I've got to be careful the stories I say. You know, that sort of, not really supposed to tell people what you like to eat. And I know that because on one year I was in the north of Thailand, and they made me some, like, please, I will not accept this in the next week, okay? If any of you offer this to me, I'll deliberately not accept it, and I keep my promises. They offered me some battered fried banana. You know, like banana and batter fried. I thought, that's really nice. So what happened next? I just mentioned that. The next day in this small village, that's all I got. My bowl was filled with battered fried banana. No rice, no curries, no fresh food, nothing else. Just, it kind of taught me a lesson. I'll never do that again. You couldn't finish it after a while. You were sick of battered fried banana. That's why sometimes the devas also not just indulge you, but they teach you a lesson to make sure you don't make that mistake again. Okay, so thank you for listening. Now, for those of you who came here and you didn't expect to talk, I hope you enjoyed that talk and hope it was useful for you. And the next time there'll be a talk here on an afternoon will be my 60th. 10 years time. Okay. Sorry?
It's more than 80. You'd be 83.
83? Nah.
Young chicken.
Quack, quack. Is that a duck or a chicken? Okay. Thank you all for coming. So please have a lovely afternoon. You can stay here and meditate some more if you wish. I'm going to go and take a rest. Oh, those of you who haven't got books yet?
Yes.
Oh yeah. Yeah, okay, we should pay respects to the Buddha. So not yet. One moment. I'm going to pay respects to the Buddha first. Oops. Aham Sama Sambuddho Bhagava Buddhaṃ Bhagavantā Abhivādēmi. Suakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami. Supatipano Bhagavato Sāvaka Sangho Sanghang Namami. Very good.
Okay. Can I have two, Ajahn? Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Maybe I'll just give one first of all,
No worries.
because I don't know if there's enough for everybody.
Oh, sure. Okay. No
And
worries.
then,
Thank you.
but if you stay long enough, there's some left over, sure. As well. Here we go. Come closer. May you live long, be happy and well. And everything go well for you in life. Okay. Okay. Here we go. All right. Thank you for watching. Book.